Did you know that Jamie Lee Curtis starred in another far worse slasher a couple of years after Halloween? No, I don't mean Halloween 2.
Someone who waits until no one can help. Prom night. If you're not back by midnight, you won't be coming home.
Oh boy, I'd seen the remake of this film before, and I always felt like, oh, that's gotta be a great one to go back and watch the original for. That must be amazing. And honestly, that excitement built up over all these years has kind of turned this film for me into the film equivalent of You Should Never Meet Your Heroes. Prom Night is about a group of teenagers who accidentally caused the death of another kid years earlier. On their prom night, they start to get mysteriously picked off by a killer who seems to know what they did several years ago. Jamie Lee Curtis is not actually playing one of them. She is instead the sister of the kid that died, and she just kind of stays out of the main plot for... You won't believe how long she stays out of the main plot for, actually. See, this is fascinating, because the entire film, it's not built like a horror film. It's not even built like a thriller, a slasher, nothing. It is built like a disaster movie, I guess, because it really takes its time. It is a cock tease, like, to an extent you just wouldn't believe. We get a full hour of Jamie Lee, like, this girl is threatening to get her back for dating her ex-boyfriend and stuff, and the killer's making occasional creepy phone calls, just one phone call to each of the 4 people he wants to go after, actually, and, like, there's just general prom shit happening. Like, the film is called Prom Night, and it is just about a prom night, for the most part. Like, there's nothing happening. We see a solid 10 minutes of them just dancing at the prom while nothing else happens. And then, an hour into this 90-minute film, swear to God, the killer actually starts to go after people. And we get consecutive scenes where couples are having sex and the killer just comes and interrupts and kills one of them. My favorite part is, I think, Leslie Nielsen. In the first serious role I've ever seen him in, and he just looks violently out of place. And he's the school's principal, and when asked by a child if he plays favourites because his 2 children go to this school, he says, "Yeah, I do. You're suspended. Get out." And you'd think that's hilarious. It's a funny moment. It's not, because everything is so deadpan. There is not a joke in this script. It is the most blasé, plain-as, dull idea for a murderer film that you could possibly have. And it really doesn't, like, at any point feel like a horror film, even once the killing starts. For real, though, Jamie Lee Curtis is the lead. Leslie Nielsen is top billed, which is ridiculous because he is barely in it. But Jamie Lee Curtis is the lead of the film, really. And she does not know that something is wrong. She's just vibing at her prom. She doesn't know there is a killer at all, that anything is going on whatsoever, anything's out of place, until there are 10 minutes left in the film. How could anybody think that's going to work? How has this not been more brutally forgotten by now? This is the worst idea for a slasher I've ever seen. Do you know how much your film has to suck for the Naughties remake, a Naughties horror remake, to be better than the original? That is a very harsh reality. The final 10 minutes are absolute just chaos once it all breaks down into that, but it is the definition of too little too late. And the final fight scene being set to this, like, jazzy disco song was so surreal and felt like it was indicative of the kind of horror comedy that I would expect to see someone like Leslie Nielsen in. And this should have probably just been that. Should have been like a more humorous take on something like Halloween. It's deadly serious. So deadly serious the entire time. And nothing happens for 60 minutes. Nothing. It's really rough. So I'm giving just Prom Night. They make it through almost the entire prom without there being a problem. 1.5 stars. At least I've seen this, and I've seen the remake, so I'm just done with this series. What? There's a sequel called Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. That may be the very thing I needed to give up watching movies forever. Subscribe for more hard truths.